everybody, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to the re-edited, redone X-Men review. I had to take the first one off for a couple of reasons. A few people found my comments misunderstanding or misleading, and there were some other things, but I won't go into that. Now, if you didn't see my X-Men review, then I'll just state most everything I did in the last one. Let's start from the beginning. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the X-Men movies are the best thing Marvel Studios, well, Marvel Entertainment at the time, has given us in Hollywood since. I haven't read the comics, so I wouldn't know. But I always thought they were the coolest heroes. I thought they were the most down-to-earth. Like, they're not infused with gamma rays, they're not bitten by radioactive spiders, they're actually born with their powers. And I always thought that was cool. That way we didn't have this big setup exposition as to how they got their powers, what's their problems. Not that I'm saying that's always a bad thing to put in, but just something of mine. Now, I don't really have much to talk about the introduction of the X-Men other than what I've heard in a Stan Lee interview, and he said, when trying to come up with these characters, he just decided, in his words, to take the easy way out and just say they were born with their powers, yada yada yada. And as such, he was going to call them the mutants. But one of his fellow writers didn't like the idea. So, Stan Lee decided to base their name off of Professor Xavier, their leader, and the X-Men were born. Now, we've had plenty of animated series since then, and I'm sure we've had a few animated movies, but the first live-action movie came out in 2000, simply titled X-Men. Now, this was one of the first movies Marvel Entertainment made. Before this, they made, I think, the Blade movies, but those are a bit understated. But I think this one really soared the studios up. And as such, we've gotten a lot of other movies since then. We've gotten Spider-Man, we've got Iron Man, Fantastic Four, which I try to forget. But I think, regardless, the X-Men movies are my favorite. So, without any further ado, let's start. So this first movie starts in 1944, in a rainy day in the streets of Poland. We see many Jewish families being moved through the muddy streets, but one in particular is two parents and their son, who looks about 12, 13. So, while they're moving through, the son is separated from his parents, but he's desperate to get back to them. And he is screaming, he's yelling, and his desperation is so much it actually seems like he's ripping apart a metal fence that separates him telekinetically. And it's just frightening almost, I think this scene is, because we're wondering, how is he doing this? And he's knocked out, so he doesn't get to complete his task, but it's just, already starts to wonder, what is this kid's issue? What's wrong with him? But we're then cut to Mississippi in the present day, where we meet a young girl named Marie, who will later be named Rogue. She's played by Anna Paquin. And what I find ironic about this actress is that before she starred in the vampire explicit vampire HBO series known as True Blood, she actually was in a lot of very innocent roles. But in this story, she's just kind of your typical teenager. And she's at her house, or I'm not sure whose house it is, it doesn't really make clear, but it's not too important, with her boyfriend, and they're hitting off pretty well, until of course they decide to kiss. And what looks like the boyfriend is getting the life sucked straight out of him. Again, a frightening scene, and we don't really know what's going on. But then we're cut to a new location. I'm thinking it's Washington, D.C., where we see Dr. Jean Grey, a mutant played by Famke Janssen, is addressing an issue called mutant registration, which is kind of like separating mutants from humans, implicating segregation, prejudice, and she's against it. And also in the audience watching, we have two of our main characters. We've got Charles Xavier, played by Patrick Stewart. We've also got Eric Lyncher, the grown-up version of the young Poland boy, now played by Ian McKellen. They have a brief bump-in where they just talk about each other's views on mutants and humans coexisting. But, again, we don't stay on that very long before we're cut to another scene. Now we're in Canada, where Rogue has gotten a ride from a truck driver and has taken her up as far as he finds willing. She's taking shelter in a bar when she sees a boxing match. And actually, it's more of a wrestling/boxing match. And it's run by a character known as the Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman. After a series of events, though, he decides to leave and is persuaded to let Rogue go along with him. And here we find out more about him, that his name is actually Logan. And just like Rogue, he's running from reality, he's running from everybody, but he doesn't really understand his past. But before you have too much time to develop that scene, they're attacked by a Sasquatch-like mutant called Sabretooth, played by Tyler Mane. Now, this guy brutally beats the crap out of Logan and is going for Rogue, but he's interrupted by two other mutants. Storm, a weather-controlling mutant played by Halle Berry, and Cyclops, a laser-eyed, well, a guy who shoots lasers out of his eyes, played by James Marsden. They just save the two from Sabretooth, and they take them back to the Professor Xavier, that's his name, his school, which is basically like a foster home for mutants, slash school, because they come here and he teaches them lessons, but at the same time he's teaching them to control their power. And he's talking to Logan, that he makes a deal with him that if Logan helps him find out what the bad mutants want from him, Professor Xavier will help teach him about his past. He'll try to find out some information. But as all this is happening, we find out Eric Lyncher, who is the movie's established antagonist, known as Magneto, is planning an evil plot to persuade, the world leaders into accepting mutants. And what follows is kind of like a mystery action thriller put in one. And it's quite an interesting romp. Now, this movie came out, I think, when I was at oldest 8. Maybe 9, but I don't think so. And I didn't see this one in theaters, but I'm sure there were a lot of fanboys, and they were all wondering, how is this going to work out? Now, from a layman's point of view, I would say it delivers on most every level, and it does it very well. The story is action-packed, and the action sequences are as well. They're really cool, they're written out really well, and they're filmed pretty well as well to make you interested in them. You aren't bored, you're not saying, ugh, another one, here we go. In this one, they're just really... I don't know how to repeat this without saying the same points that I keep doing, but I think director Bryan Singer and the writers really made these well into the movie. Now, the film's big strength, well, one of them, I haven't gotten to all of them, is its characters, which are really well drawn out, and as far as I think, are written just perfectly. Like, well, not more so written, but casted. I think Hugh Jackman is great as Wolverine. Patrick Stewart is great as Charles Xavier. I liked Anna Paquin as Rogue, actually. I think she was really good. And especially, I like Ian McKellen as Magneto. Because the way I see it, villains should overall think that they're the ones that are doing the right thing. And not look at themselves and say, oh, I'm evil, or mwahahaha, what evil thing can I do tomorrow? Mwahahaha. I borrowed that from an interview somewhere, and I think Magneto perfectly visualizes it. He does not think what he's doing is bad. In fact, he thinks it's not just going to help him, but all mutants in general. And I really like the twist because a lot of supervillains are really cartoony and silly. But Magneto is... You know, Ian McKellen is my favorite actor in this movie. In fact, he usually is my favorite characters when he's in movies. Like, he was my favorite character in Lord of the Rings when he was Gandalf, for instance. But this movie, I think, in addition to action, though, it also has quite a lot of humor. And they have a lot of fun with this. Like, for instance, there's a running gag where Wolverine hates Cyclops for the mere reason that we're supposed to believe that I think Wolverine's just jealous. But there's a point right towards the end of the movie where Wolverine was fighting a shape-shifting mutant, one of the antagonists, and when he finally comes across Cyclops again, he proves that it's really him by calling him a dick. And I still think that's a funny line. I don't care what age group you are, you're probably going to find that humorous. Now, I don't think the humor is on the level of, say, Monty Python. You're probably not going to be quoting the jokes as soon as you leave the theater. I still think you'll laugh while it's there. And that's the best thing. But, without doubt, my favorite thing about these movies is how they deal with prejudice and politics. Because a running theme of the movie is, are mutants good or dangerous? And this is really tested a lot because some humans absolutely despise mutants. They think they should be killed, they think they should be banned, the works. They just don't want them around. And others are supportive of them, even if they have nothing to do with mutants. And on the same side, you've got mutants who either hate or are interested in humans. Because, I don't know, I don't have too much to say about this, just that, again, it was really well done, really well written into the story, and I think that's what really set me apart when watching these movies. It's what also made the only other superhero franchise I like more than this, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, the same thing, I think, made it so well. The politics is put into that. It's kind of a gothic sense of view, but it really works in the case of X-Men. Now, there are problems with this movie, I won't hide that, and they do come with the story that I did kind of compliment on. Now, I've said that I think the characters are really well developed, really well drawn out, but I think that's almost the problem here. I think there's a little bit too much focus on the characters and not enough focus on the story. And because of that, the movie suffers. And while I'm on that, I want to talk about the pacing of this movie, especially in the first half, which really seems to, like, cut us to that scene, cut us to this scene, cut us to that scene. You don't really know what story you're supposed to be following. It's like, I hate to compare it to this, but it's like the ending of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where they had so many different things going on, you didn't know which one you're supposed to favor. Now, granted, this movie is a lot better than The Phantom Menace, but it's just a small little gripe. And there are a few plot holes I think this movie has. Like, this is something I've never understand. So, the entire plot they have was one of Magneto's mutants infiltrates the school and convinces Rogue to leave, and that will in turn get the X-Men to leave and try to find her, and so the Minion can go in and infiltrate and sabotage Cerebro, which is what Professor Xavier uses to locate mutants. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but there are a few little problems I have with this. For instance, the bad mutants also meet Rogue up at a train station that she left in. Now, it's obvious that Charles found out where she was going because he's got Cerebro. He can locate any mutant like that. But how did Magneto know which train station she was going to, or that she went to a train station at all? Or how about when? How did they know when she was going to go? Maybe they arrived half an hour late and she was already gone and they couldn't find her. And how did they know when the mutants, the X-Men, were going to leave? That whole plot doesn't really make sense to me. Now, granted, I think Magneto's entire scheme was ingenious, and it worked to very good intent. However, it just, to me, feels like too much of it is based off of timing. Like, you had to time these events perfect, otherwise they would not work, and you were screwed. Now, maybe there's an ability Magneto has in the comics that they just didn't touch on in the movies. If you're a comic book fan and you know the answer to that, then by all means give it to me in the comment section below, but I didn't get it. I don't know how Magneto is suddenly a mind reader or whatnot, but I don't know. It's a small thing. It still led to some cool action sequences and some interesting story, but overall, I still had a really good time. So, I think in the long run, I think X-Men was an entertaining film even with its flaws. I like the characters, I like the views, I like the action sequences, and even though the story had a few holes in it from time to time, I still thought that was enjoyable. I think this was a very good way to start the franchise for director Bryan Singer, who would return to reprise his role as director in the next one, and is also going to produce First Class. But, again, this was a really fun movie. I really enjoyed it, and just keep... Well, I don't have to tell you to keep up with me. I've already done the rest of the X-Men reviews now, but anyway. So, definitely a fun film. I recommend it, whether you like Marvel, superhero, or action movies. I thought it was entertaining. I think it's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. I enjoyed it. So, 3.5 stars out of 5 for X-Men. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. And until next time, peace. Shah!